And I thought it was really bad that I didn't have like one sole person. And she was like, why does one sole person have to fill every single need? You can have friends in multiple areas of your life. That is okay, and that's good, actually, because you're going to get more things. And, like, you do not need to have it as just one little bubble. You can have a bigger bubble. That's okay.
You're listening to the Living Adventures podcast, a lifestyle podcast hosted by Ashley Milkey and Victoria Vance. Tune in for a new episode every Thursday to hear our honest conversations about topics like freedom, creativity, spirituality, luxury living, health and wellness, and above all else, building community.
We have real and unfiltered conversations inspired by our search to feel connected to people who give a shit about us, support our dreams, and understand our struggles. Our mission is to provide you with the tools, guidance, and motivation to navigate any moment in your life with the lens of your neurodivergent mind, with a community who gets you. Adventure on.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Living Adventures podcast. I'm your co-host here, Ashley Milkey with
Victoria Vance.
And I'm so excited because today we are giving you 5 tips to find happiness in a world that works against us. And the world works against us in many ways, but especially if you have ADHD, and some of that will factor into this, but there's some really good tips here.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the topic, Victoria, tell us about Disney.
Disney was amazing, exhausting, but amazing. There was a ride that looks a lot like Sedona that you're going through and everything, and that was so freaking fun. And it was amazing to meet 2 people who listen to this or in like my community and everything, Jake and Kate, and I met Kate's whole family, and bringing like online connection into real person world. It was so amazing, and my imagination really just kick-started again being there. I think it was kind of like a final step for me because it's like, okay, I've done so much self-work and like shadow work, whatever, inner child stuff, and like doing things that I always wanted to do as a kid, and one of them was going to Disney. But it was like even better because then like bringing community, and then also Kate's kid literally looked exactly like me, and so it was like doing something to my subconscious as well at the same time, like being with her, and it was just really, really amazing, and just like being immersed in other people's kind of like creativity and imagination, because it's like, okay, somebody created all these movies, and then somebody created from those movies these rides, and so then it's like from somebody's imagination, now I'm being immersed and experiencing it, and it like enlightened my brain to like visualize in just like a reality way to then bring into me.
I was even going to ask you, like, why do you think it sparked your imagination? Because it sounds like it almost expanded you. You're like, wow, if people can believe and see and create things in this way, how could I see things? How could I create things? What does my imagination look like? And if they have this much imagination, why couldn't I have that much imagination? You know?
Yeah, and it's like, I'm realizing a lot of the imagination, especially like in business, it's kind of hard sometimes because it's not necessarily physical. And so having that of like, okay, they created this and made it come true into this reality for so many others to enjoy. And now I'm immersed in their creativity. And so it's like, I know like singers and songwriters feel like this when they release a song, like they write and they're nervous to put it out. They're putting like a lot of their emotions out, whatever, what people think. And it's a very personal experience. I mean, not every person writes all of their songs and everything, but they're putting themselves out there. And it's like, I'm putting myself out there, but sometimes it doesn't feel like the same exact way. And so to feel all of that, just like I was able to like encapture that and instill that in myself so that I can do more of that, I guess.
Yeah, it's really hard when you're online and it's like you're sharing your thoughts and your ideas, but it's like, and then it like just poof on the TikTok app that I just closed doesn't exist anymore. But then like, yeah, in Disney, it's like, wow, here's this physical representation of something somebody created in their brain, which is so cool.
Yeah, and like you see people, like you might not see people enjoying it every day, but like there's people posting pictures, like it's huge, it's this massive thing, and so I think it's really interesting.
That's so fun. I want to go to Disney. Well, I will be going to Disney when I do my half marathon in November.
And there's a ride because that's at Epcot, and there's a Ratatouille ride there that I want to go on.
Nice. Me too. I want to go on anything, and hopefully survive a 15-mile run.
That's true. I also think that part of it felt more magical and like immersive because I didn't know a single ride there, and I didn't look up anything before I went.
So
like
fun.
I know like what Magic Kingdom kind of looks like, and like I know Epcot has the big circle, but that's all I kind of really knew. Like I didn't know anything else, what the rides would be like, and so the entire thing I'm just like experiencing it in full newness, which was so many wow moments, but also so good to spark that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I love wow. Yeah, it's like you went in with no expectation, so anything would have been a good thing, which is such a good vibe to have when you do things. That's kind of like me. Like I'm going skiing this weekend. I know we're going to Vermont, and that's about all I know. And Adrian planned
freezing.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be -10, but warmer than Boston. It's going to be -45 with wind chill in Boston this weekend. So there's that. And anyways, the good news about my ski trip is Adrian planned the whole thing. So I just get to go and be like, wow, everything's amazing with my 45 hand warmers.
Yeah, you want to leave me a hand warmer?
Yeah, you can have, we'll leave some hand warmers. Yeah.
I'm going to die outside with Max.
Yeah.
I'm pet sitting Max, everyone.
Yeah, she's pet sitting Max for me while I go on a vacation that someone else planned. And I was like, I was telling my sister, I was like, this is amazing. I wish someone else always planned my trips. I love just showing up. And she goes, Ashley, literally that's what travel agents do. And I was like, oh, yeah, true.
No, but like actually, because having everyone else plan Disney and I was able to like not expect anything and just like go in and just have the time of my life, and like I'm just full on embodying, I'm just happy to be here. Like, oh, this is what we're gonna go do next. Okay, cool. Ha 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 ha. Was so amazing.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I mean, that kind of leads us into the topic of the day, which is really 5 tips to find happiness in a world that works against you. And some could argue that vacations always try to work against us. That's not like what the topic is about, but I can think of so many different times whenever I travel, things go wrong and I get mad and frustrated. And so today, Victoria and I want to talk to you about what you can do in those situations where you feel frustrated or that things are out of your control, or like it feels like everyone is working against you, whether it's with your ADHD, your job, your living situation, your money, your happiness, whatever. So that way in those moments, you know the 5 things that you can default to that are going to bring you back to a sense of joy and happiness.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if we think about like what me and Victoria thought about before we started thinking about this topic was really like, what are the ways the world works against us? And if you're listening, feel free to comment on social media and let us know what you think are the ways the world works against you. But Victoria, what were some of the things that you came up with?
Some of them was expectations. We often just expect way too much in the world, and we don't realize things that are kind of working out, and we're just like, okay, that finally happened, good, next. And it's just like we don't appreciate things.
I was gonna say, yeah, and with that, like with having high expectations, and that can sometimes feel like the world is working against us. And Victoria and I, when we were talking earlier, had a really good example. She's like, you know, you go to the airport and you get on a plane and you expect it to take off on time. Like that's usually the default. And because that's the default, we don't really care that it took off on time. But if it were to not take off on time and it was delayed 3 hours and it was going to take forever for us to get to our destination, then we would be mad, and we would get to probably the place where we're like, oh my gosh, why did this happen? Why is this happening to me? This is horrible. And get in this really negative loop of thoughts because of the thing that's happening. And it's not to say it's not frustrating, but if we look at the opposite and the reverse, we wouldn't have been happy if the plane took off on time anyway. Like we wouldn't have even thought about it, you know?
And like another great example of this is, okay, so you know when like you're sick and I'm talking about like kind of like a common cold being sick, and you're having a hard time breathing, and so it's like hard to eat, and you are constantly out of breath eating because it's like you can't breathe through your nose, and so you're doing it all through your mouth, and it's just exhausting. and your throat hurts and everything, where on a day that, you know, you feel fine, you're just like, yeah, I feel fine. Like, I should feel fine. That's good. That's normal. Like, you don't think about it. But then that time you're like, oh my God, I miss when my nose like would just breathe. Oh, it's so much better. And it's like, now you're just longing for the other thing, and you're just not being happy with whatever is being presented to you. And we just take so much for granted.
Oh, that's so true. Anytime I'm sick, I'm like, I just want to breathe again. And I literally always think about that, how I'm like, wow, I'm never grateful for breathing until I can't. And then it's like the day I start breathing again, I was like, oh, you're like, wow. And then you're like, yep, okay, that's what I expect. Universe, body, you better keep it together.
And you just move on so dang fast from it. And, it, you know, I was thinking about that today. It's like, my nose is better. Ha ha ha. This is so nice. And it was just like, wow.
And like,
I'm sick. Me is so proud of me for being happy of this. You know?
Heck yeah. And it's even all kinds of health too. It's like, how grateful are we to like really walk or to be outside or to move our bodies? Like we don't ever think about that. We just have like that as an expectation. So that's one way. Let's build up all the ways the world works against us first so we can feel really frustrated about it, and then we'll present the 5 solutions or the 5 steps to finding more happiness. Okay, so the next one we talked about was not having enough money or feeling financial insecurity.
So the way I kind of think about this is we often think like, okay, once I have X, then this will happen. Like, once I've made it, then I'll be able to, like, take time and do things for myself. Once I do all of that. And it's like, it's no if then. If then doesn't really, you know, work out. And so, well, now I'm kind of going into solutions talking about this. But, like, we think that we can't have anything now. We always just expect it has to happen later, and it's kind of like the Sigma grind set of like, we have to do everything now so I can get that in the future, but I can't experience any of it now.
Right, like we feel frustrated when we don't have the amount of money that we want or the success that we want. And so it feels like the world is working against us in the way that we crave something better for ourselves, and we feel like the thing that we want is going to bring us more happiness, whether it's money or success or a new job or whatever. And we think it's going to make us look better, feel better, be more confident. And the word more just keeps coming to my mind. And we think if we get more, we'll feel more, we'll have more, and things will be better. And that makes us feel like when it doesn't happen, everything is working against us, because it's like almost like you're like, why isn't this working? Like, I just want to feel successful and I won't until I have this money. So why isn't it happening yet? And like, that's the spiral we get caught in that makes us start to feel like we're in a pressure cooker.
Yeah, and like we kind of make ourselves feel small when we don't have that. As like, I can't talk about it. I kind of got to shy away until my corner until I have that. And so that's not a good thing either around that situation, which just like amplifies it times 10.
Right. Like, it's like, oh, I can't take up space until I have this thing that I want to achieve. So then it makes us feel frustrated because we want to take up space and share our views and share our opinions and celebrate ourselves, but we feel like we can't. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 on our list of the ways the world works against us that's super frustrating is feeling lonely, which is like, what did we say it was? Yeah, it's like just America. That really, not just America. People feel lonely all over the world. And actually, people have been more isolated than ever since the pandemic. And they've done studies on people to like ask them how much time they're spending alone. And it has massively increased since 2020, which is obviously to be expected. But it's left us feeling alone and sad and all kinds of sad things. And I feel like if you don't have community, if the world actually does work against you, because there's so much you gain from being around people who can help you and support you and things like that.
You know, and along with that is there's also so much stuff that's like communicated to us that like, oh, you need to isolate while doing this. And like a lot of the self-help stuff is like, oh, healing happens when you're by yourself in like a dark room in a dark corner. Like, you can't do that in an open space. That all has to be done at home and alone. And that's kind of it. And though maybe some of it does need to be, not all of it, and there's a time where we need to come out, but like we're kind of taught really do it all alone. Like this is not, nobody has time for your burdens and issues. You need to deal with this all by yourself. Like this is not for the open world.
Yeah, I even think about like how we all do like journaling and meditating alone in our morning routines or at night. And then if you think about when we go on like a retreat to, let's say, Costa Rica or Guatemala or somewhere international, and it's like we do these retreats where people are like meditating together, journaling at the same time, and like having these really community collective experiences. And like how wild would it be if like at my apartment complex in the mornings they offered meditation and journaling every morning for people like who lived here? That would be so weird because you never see that happen, and that's just like another example of how alone we are and how shamed we are for doing different things or being told that we should do things alone. Even like if I think about business, like especially if you're an online business owner, we are alone all day long in our homes working on our projects. And you know, a lot of people don't even tell people about their projects until they're successful, but then by the time they get really successful, they're too successful to feel like they can make authentic friendships. And so you think in the beginning like, oh, let me not have a big community because I don't want to embarrass myself, but then you get so successful that you're like, oh, I can't have any friends because I don't know who's trying to take advantage of me, who will understand my struggles, who will shame me for my success but feeling bad sometimes. And it's just like this never-ending cycle of no matter where you are, you're forced to be alone and feel bad about some part of yourself.
Yeah, and like, you know, even if you do try to go out, like, then it doesn't go well, and then you're like, oh, well, I guess it's just better to be alone and everything, because then other people can't disappoint me. And like, we're kind of bred to like believe, not bred, but like told to believe that. And like, even though like your building has community events, whenever we've gone to a community event, we don't really talk to anybody. It's not actually community. It's like, oh, come get your like free food that we're finally providing you for once or whatever. It's not actually community building. There is no aspect. It's just this exists. You can come down from your room if you want. And it's kind of like still incredibly isolating.
Right. And then it's like, you think about, it's like, I feel like we don't think about this, but like that is a form of the world working against you, because it's like, imagine there's 1,000 of us and all 1,000 of us are trying to push our own individual boulder up a hill, and we're all just looking at each other and we're all just pushing it up. And in reality, only one boulder really needs to get up the hill, but we've been told that we all have to have our own boulders. And if we all just came together and pushed up that one boulder, we would get there so much faster. And so that's what happens in our society, is like we are alone and we have been told that we have to be alone and we have to have our own goals and we have to be separated from people. I mean, you know, I even think about like romantic partnerships where, yes, some people are codependent and that's a problem, but we've also been told to be very individualistic and like have your own dreams, have your own aspirations, stay separate, like blah, 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 blah. And not that that's a bad thing, but it can become to the extreme where you're so isolated, you're doing everything alone, you don't have friends, you're that girl that we talked about, the influencer who was crying on a Friday night in one of our episodes when we were talking about friendship, who doesn't feel like she has anyone. And that burden that they're carrying could be so much easier if they just recognize that the community could push them up. But that's how the world works against us, is because you feel like you have shame around who you are and no one's supporting who you are, and you have to solve everything alone by yourself, down to how you're gonna fix your car, get picked up from somewhere late at night, take care of your kids, yada yada yada.
And it kind of goes into, I guess, like our next point is like, you know, we all need to be productive all the time, and we're going to talk about productivity. Is like, we can do that as the next one, but you feel like, or people feel like, we need to always be doing something so they don't have time for your issues, you know, and like we can't make space for that.
That's an interesting way to look at like why people don't support each other or why we've become so individualistic, because it's true, like if a friend calls you at 2 a.m. and says, I need to be picked up from this place or whatever, I mean, most people would go help their friend, right? But other people would be like, well, I need to sleep. I need to sleep because if I don't sleep, then I'm not going to be productive the next day. And it's like, in reality, what matters more? But it's the world working against us, because we've been told that we need to be productive, so much so that we're willing to sacrifice anything and everything, including our friendships, including our relationships, including our own mental health and sanity, in an effort to find that productivity.
And I also, and like, okay, there's another point in here that I saw a TikTok, and I want to stitch this, but the stitches are off, and so I'll do this. But there was a video of two friends, and be like, when a friend, like a mutual introduced us, but now we don't like her anymore. And the comment section was fucking wild, everyone. So many people are like, and this is why you don't introduce people to people, because they'll do this to you. And it's like, we don't know the situation of why they're not friends with that person. Something bad could have happened. They could have moved. They could, like, so many things could have happened. Or maybe they realized they didn't really like that person anymore. There's so many things. And we go into, oh my God, now I'm not introducing. And you're literally like, we're taught to prohibit community and other people from meeting each other. And like, you shouldn't let others meet each other.
Well, even think of like the concept of best friend, like, you know, in like elementary school, and people are like, who's your best friend? And you're like, oh, this person, and they're like, no, who's your best friend? I want to know your best friend. And it's like, what even is that? Like, why do you have one best friend? Like, why do you just have to have a best friend? Why can't you have a bunch of friends, a bunch of good friends, a bunch of best friends? And it's probably because of that, because we've been told that only one person at a time can care about us deeply, and if they find someone better to care about deeply, then they're gonna leave us and they're gonna go get a better friend because we can only have one friend. Like, that literally makes no sense at all.
Like, so within the first month of seeing the therapist that I still go to now, I literally asked her, I was like, so I think I'm really like fucked up, because I don't have like one person I always go to. So it's like, I have this friend that I hang out a lot with at school, and like we do other things too, but then I also have this friend who I'm extremely close to at work, and we do other stuff too. And then I have this friend in another section of my life. And I thought it was really bad that I didn't have like one sole person. And she was like, why does one sole person have to fill every single need? You can have friends in multiple areas of your life. That is okay, and that's good, actually, because you're going to get more things. And, like, you do not need to have it as just one little bubble. You can have a bigger bubble. That's okay. And I literally had to have somebody tell me that, because I could not, like, see that that was okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, on the flip side, you could have had my situation where, you know, we had a group of like 10 friends who were all friends in high school, and it was always like, who's best friend? Oh, these two are best friends, so they isolate these people, and I can't hang out with those people because they're best friends. And it's like, oh my God, why can't we all just be friends? And this sounds really silly to talk about because it really does sound like high school, but the fact that there's like TikToks and like grown adults isolating people and talking like that just shows you how much we're conditioned to think that we need to be alone and only a select few could ever care about us. And I just think it just really makes me think about other cultures where that is just not the case at all. But it is just an example of like how the world does like sets us up to fail by working so hard to make things so difficult when it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah, and then like when we try, we feel like because the system is working against us in this way, we feel like it's so hard to reach that stuff because there's so many layers in place to make it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I even think about like our event in Boston, and even me going to an event, like it's scary to put yourself out there in that way because you don't know who you're going to interact with and you don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, I think about people who hear about our event and they're wondering if they should go because, you know, community is scary and meeting new friends is scary and what's it going to be like? But it's like, what would happen if we removed that fear? Because it does set us up to fail if we don't even give ourselves the opportunity to believe that more than one friend or more than your current group could be enough for you. And I think it's cool that you had a bunch of different friends, but I also think people can have a bunch of different communities that support them and their interests. I mean, for example, like Adrian has his group of friends, right? And with them, I talk about One Piece and Dungeons and Dragons and video games. And like, I could have another group of friends that I do not talk about that with. Like if I go to this event, or when we go to our event on next Thursday, or I guess it's this Thursday if you're listening to this episode, I'm probably not going to talk about One Piece Dungeons and Dragons with just about anybody, you know? I might
But
save
if
that.
somebody brings it up, that can happen, you know, because we are so like, and the thing that's so interesting about like ADHD is like, you know, like we're so told to like isolate and everything, and like kind of from like people are like, oh my God, you're being too much, like can you just pick one thing and be interested in it, is like we actually have this ability to find community in so many different sections because we'll have so many interests.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know,
I was gonna well, what that sparked for me is like, even in high school, I wasn't like in one group, you know, even in middle school, like I was friends with the emo girls, the cheerleaders, the band people, the choir people, like anybody, you name it, I was friends with. And so I never really felt like I had one group. But the thing was, as a kid, that didn't even like register in my mind that was like a thing that mattered, especially in middle school. I was like, one day I was eating lunch with this group of friends, the next day I was eating lunch with this group of friends, and that felt normal to me. And it wasn't until I got older and society started to be like, pick one friend, be one kind of person, put yourself in a box, that I even was like, oh, should I define myself? Like, what?
Yeah. It's just, there's so many things against community.
Yeah, it's pretty
They really
rude.
be hitting hard.
Anyways, well, on to productivity, because that, you made a good point about the fact that people are willing to not willing to be good friends in the name of productivity, which is wild to me. But dude, and like what drives me insane is just, especially for myself, is how much my worth is tied to productivity. Like even this week, this has just like been the hardest pattern for me to break and unlearn in my process to like stop my burnout cycle. I just feel like I need to be productive all the time, and it is so hard just to stop and slow down, or just like recognize when enough is enough, especially when you're a business owner. I've done so much this week, so like more than the normal human would ever do, and it's Thursday and I feel like I should do more, and I'm like, why? And it's because of societal programming and the way our work culture is set up.
And also, like, you know, still believing in, you know, the Monday to Friday life. And so, like, even though we don't really work on Fridays, it's like, okay, well, it's still Thursday, and since I don't work on Friday, like, I should do more today, since I'm not going to do anything tomorrow. Even though it's like, it's every Friday I don't work. Like, and there's a reason I don't work on it. But I'm still like, no, we should do more.
So, totally. And it's like, I don't even know what it's like. All I can think about is how much work I've done this week. And it was like, it's my problem, because at the beginning of the week, I set the expectation way too high on myself. And instead of being like, if we come back to like having too high expectations, I was like, I'm going to get these like 8 things done. And they're like huge projects. And instead of being like, wow, you got these 2 really big projects done, let's celebrate that. I'm like, okay, let's do more. Like, Ashley, my Milky, get your shit together. But it's not a you problem if you're also that way. It is a you problem, but you've been conditioned to believe that's the way to go. I mean, I even think about high school or college. Like, you always had homework. In college, I felt like I don't know about you because you went to art school, so your experience is probably either different, but it might be the similar. But for me, I felt like I always had something to do, always had something to read, always had something to work on, always had an exam I could be studying for, a paper I could be researching for. I always felt like I had to be productive in college, and that really has bled into my life. And it leads into corporate America too. When I was working my 9 to 5, there's always work that you had to do. The work was never going to stop. And if you weren't working, you better figure out something to look busy, because people hate it when you don't look busy. And I'm like, what is that? Who cares?
No, I had that. It was a little bit different in how it kind of played out, because it's like yours is like there's so many opportunities. Mine was more like, so when you work at design places, you sign in, most of them, you'll sign insane NDAs. And so I can't like legally talk about most of the stuff that I did, but also none of that stuff can get put in a portfolio, and I can't necessarily show it to another company. And you have to get special approval to do that. And so if you're going from like rival companies, you cannot show anything, and so you have to constantly be doing work and design work on your own and building your portfolio. And whenever like we're not working in the studios, they're like, well, then what are you going to do for your portfolio? What are you doing for your portfolio? How are you going to do your portfolio? And I never like allowed myself vacations, because then on a vacation, I'm like, I need to get ahead, because my entire life I'm so behind, and I'm not like the most gifted person in the world. And I do have to work on top of going to school. So I have to take this entire vacation, work, double my shifts, and I also need to work and get like a whole portfolio done, so that it's easier and I don't have as much time, you know, when it comes to applying for internships or jobs in 2 months. And it's just like constant, like, oh, I can always do more on this project. I can better those drawings. I could do more prototypes, and what about more ideation? I can take this even farther. And so it's like this same exact concept, but it just played out in different ways. And so I never allowed myself to rest ever.
Wow. And like these are really great examples of how corporate America and businesses and brands do not give an F about us. Like imagine these companies care so much about their intellectual property, and like yeah, I get it. I would be pissed if somebody stole my intellectual property, but they care so much about themselves that they don't even care about you getting your next job. They don't even care about your career. They don't even care about you having evidence of being a good designer, so much so that it's common in your industry that you have to do all this work on top of the things you're creating for this company. That's ridiculous. And it's the same thing with like 9-to-5s, or corporate jobs. We work 9 to 5, and if you're done by 3, you better figure out more things to do. And it's almost like the pattern that I'm hearing and everything that we've talked about is like more, work more, have more money, be more successful. Don't have that many friends though, because that's the one place where you shouldn't have more. And it's like, get out of here.
And it's like after 10 years, so the way NDAs work in the design world is like, okay, let's say if the product is then released, you can then put it in your portfolio. But people don't realize from ideation to actual production in stores or online can average about 5 to 10 years. So then 10 years later, now I've had maybe 3 to 10 more jobs, and now I can finally put it there. And it's like, okay, now I finally have more. I'm finally reaping the benefits later. And it goes into the thing of like, oh, you work hard now so you can get it later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
and
it's
then by the time you get there, you'll still be working hard for whatever other thing they told you.
Because they've bled it into even harder for so many more years that it's going to be even harder to let go of. And it's like, okay, great, we're letting go of this in our 20s, but still, fuck, this is rough. And we're probably going to face it in our entire lives no matter what.
Yeah, because we are living in a system. Well, and we're living in a system, and we're living in capitalism, right? And part of the problem is capitalism that drives this obsession with productivity and success. And the problem is you don't get to unsubscribe from capitalism. I was literally talking to my sister about this right before we got on this, and because I was talking about de-influencing on TikTok, and Victoria has also talked about this, and we've been talking about how people are doing these de-influencing videos where we're like, I'm convincing you not to buy these products. And it's like, well, they're still influencing you. So they're calling it de-influencing, but they're still influencing you not to buy things, which is great because, maybe people will consume less if they know these products that have been hyped by influencers are bad. But then on the flip side, they're probably still going to sell you something, whether it's another product they've used or something else they enjoy. And I had somebody, I posted that, and I talked about how the reason our job as consumers is really to get to a place where we have that authentic filter where we know exactly what we like to buy, and people can recommend us things, and then we can make the decision if we want to buy that thing or not. And at the end of it, I was like, if you want to learn how to build that filter, if you want to get to a place where you know who you are authentically, and you want to surround yourself with people who are deciding to do the same, come to our event on Thursday, because we're getting business owners together who want to learn how to be themselves and be so confident in themselves they can show up in a room full of people and not care if other people have different opinions. And then some guy commented, and he was like, oh, it's really ironic that you're promoting your business at the end of this de-influencing video. And I'm like, I'm not going to feel bad for promoting an event to build community. First of all, what did we just talk about? Society hates community. Second of all, we don't get to just unsubscribe from capitalism. We really don't. And people will always be selling things and always be promoting things. And what's really hard is we have to learn how to do the best we can under the system of capitalism. And that's, coming back to your point, why we will probably struggle with productivity for a very long time in our lives, because no matter how much we try to make things different, we're still living in this system. And, my husband works a regular 9-to-5 job. That's going to impact my life. People we interact with have other people in their lives who are impacted by this system. It's just always going to be that way until something ridiculous happens. And I don't know if we're going to be alive for that, whatever that might be. But yeah, we're pretty much here,
Yeah, and it's hard to escape, but there's certain things that we can do to not do as much, and a lot of it is that authentic filter and everything. And I think it's so funny, like the de-influencing thing of like, oh, don't buy these products. And they're like, okay, what do you use instead? Well, I use this. Dear fucking God. You're literally just doing the same exact thing. You're not de-influencing anything. The only thing you can influence me is I saw a video months ago of like how to de-ball your dog's fur from snow. So like if you don't know, like sometimes when your dog goes in the snow for a really long time, they get like hardened snow on their hair and everything, and it's hard to get off. Is they were having a whisk and just like going down, and it just comes off immediately. And I'm like influenced. I'm doing that. It's not something I have to buy. It's just a strategy that is amazing. And like there was a video a few months ago of like, oh, a great new moon practice is to like clean your doors for good to come in. And I'm like, okay, you're going to tell me to clean my doors? I probably should have done that anyways. Like that's not something I think to clean. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go clean my doors. It's like, yeah, that's something I probably should do anyways. It's something I'm experiencing and having issues with. And it's something that's not going out of my way and is like improving my life. Me getting like the next, you know, trend of whatever's going on, that is just going along to follow somebody else's life to kind of go after them. And so something, you know, we think of, I guess I'm just going off on a tangent, de-influencing.
Hey, influencing still is I was thinking about this. Influencing is still something that works against us in the world. So it's fine to talk about. And the other thing I will say is like, it's not bad to be influenced by someone. You just gave two really great examples of being influenced. That is totally fine.
You know, and it's about nuance, and it's about like, okay, so there's some ways that I'm going to be influenced and they're perfectly fine. And there's sometimes that you're going to go buy the product and then you're going to hate it after. You know, sometimes you go buy it, like go to a new restaurant and you fucking hate the restaurant. That's okay. You tried something. You had your own experience based off of it. And now you can decide what to do next.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, people are influencing you every day, not just with products. My husband's going to influence me on what we should have for dinner tonight. I mean, he's going to try. He might not win. Or I'm going to influence him and try to tell him what movie we should watch tonight or what restaurant we should go to. All of those kinds of things. And like we said, it's up to you to decide what to do. It gets really bad when you're over consuming with no purpose. And that is a way the world works against you, is getting you so caught up in the cycle of consuming that you forget what actually brings you joy and what actually makes you happy. And it's funny because I just filmed a YouTube video on this today. And something that I talk about in that video is about how we originally, like influencer marketing, it originally started off with like genuine people just giving reviews on products. And when you wanted something, for example, let's say if I was looking for a new laptop, I would Google reviews of that laptop to decide if I want it. But now we take that system into something like TikTok, where all you're doing is consuming on a loop, content and information, and there's no purpose, there's no rhyme, there's no reason besides what the algorithm thinks you're interested in. And instead of looking for something that you need and seeing what people think about it, you're being shown the 50 Amazon products that you need this week. And like, do you really need those 50 Amazon products? Probably not. And now, because you want those 50 Amazon products, you're stressed out about money. You think you need to be more successful because this influencer has this life that you want. You don't have any friends and everything sucks because your expectations are too high because of the internet. It's this big cycle of the world working against you.
And I think it's so funny when you're like mentioning that is like, okay, so there's productivity in consuming as like, oh, you always need more. You always need to have the best thing. You always need to be doing this. You always need to be improving. Like you always need to be better. And so it's like feeding that productivity into consumerism at the same time.
Right, because it's like, if I'm better, I'm being productive, so I gotta buy this thing because that means I'm productive. Because even okay, if you have a thing on your to-do list and it's like, buy sponges, right? I need to buy sponges. I really actually do need to buy sponges because my cleaning person is coming tomorrow. But if I put that on my to-do list, I check it off, I feel productive, right? I feel good about myself that day. I did something, and all I did was buy things. That's crazy.
And, you know, at like the same time when the de-influencing thing came out is, okay, so many people are fed up from like buying these things and over consuming and going into credit card debt and everything again. But like, because they were being sold something else that they weren't really realizing they were being sold. And so it's like, okay, they're being sold a product, but they're also being sold this lifestyle. And so in like September is when it was like, okay, you know, we are feeding talking videos. So then to do talking videos, to keep people on your page is like to do something. So all the get readies with me came at that time. And so now everyone's feeding that products, and also everyone's like, oh my God, I'm rushing, I have to go get ready and everything, and feeding that productivity cycle, but also feeding that like, oh, you need to always be getting ready. You need to always be looking good. You need to always be like that. So now that productivity plus telling you how to be like that, now you're following that cycle when really like you might have not cared about any of that shit. But because you saw it so often, you fell for it. And it's okay if you fell for it and everything. It happens.
Yeah, I think the getting ready with me thing was really interesting. What?
The second thing on that was like, okay, so then like they get big and everything, and this was starting to happen a little bit earlier in the de-influencing thing of like, oh, now they're not relatable. And you're just mad they're not necessarily relatable to you because you were looking for somebody to look up to and give you all the answers. Because you're not looking at the answers within. And you don't need to have all the answers, but you do need to think of what you want instead and like your own review of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the getting ready with me thing was really interesting because I never really thought about it that way. That the fact that these people were like getting ready, quote unquote, in 60 seconds or less, and then also showing you products in those 60 seconds, and then so in addition in pushing products on you, they're also showing you that you need to get ready and this needs to be something that you're doing because that makes you a more productive human. And there's also people who say, like, give advice who are like, oh, if you don't get ready every single day, like, how are you even going to be productive? And shaming you for not being productive in a way so simple as what the F you do to get dressed in the morning. Like, who freaking cares what you do? Put makeup on, don't put makeup on, brush your hair, don't brush your hair. Like, if you feel good about yourself, go ride. Forget what other people tell you. And the other thing that you mentioned about people getting mad about influencers not being relatable, that's also interesting because that I think a lot of people think that influencers communities are their communities when in reality you're actually just a customer to that influencer. When they get that big, you're no longer a community member. They actually are not doing things in your benefit. This does not go for every influencer. There are many good influencers out there, 95%. But there's many bad ones, and so you're a customer to them, and of course they're not relatable to you because you were trying to find something relatable to fulfill your need for community, because that made you feel less alone when you had someone you could relate to who felt like you, who had hard days like you. But now they're not having hard days anymore because they have money, and so now you're wanting more money and you don't have community. And it comes back to these four things that we've already talked about: not having enough money or success, not having any community, having really high expectations for how the world should work or how life should be for you, and also feeling so obsessed with productivity to get there. Wow.
Yep.
Full circle, baby.
Late stage capitalism, baby.
Woo! All right. Well,
what's number 5?
Number 5 is people in situations that we cannot control that work against us.
And so it's like all of that, like, I guess, and it's kind of, we're kind of talking about like control here and like our lack of control. And so, all of that's happening, and then you just feel so out of control, and like you're hopeless. You feel hopeless. Like, we just stated so many things that are working against you. It's like, well, then I guess I'll just do nothing. I guess I'll just go to bed. Like, I can't do anything. Little old me can't do anything about that. What am I going to do? Like, everything's like this. And it just puts you into like a really deep state to continue isolating you.
Right.
And to feel like you can't do anything. And, you can try, but then you're like the red flag and everything if you act out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even think about what we've just said. There's nothing we can do about capitalism. Influencers are always going to suck. We're just stuck here. My best friend Becky's going to be mad at me, and she's going to go be friends with my other best friend and leave me out, and there's nothing I can do about it. Like, that's the cycle we're living in. So now that we've like spent 45 minutes giving you doom and despair, here are the 5 tips to find happiness. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Yikes.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
Well, we just were really mad about things, apparently. So the first thing is, clearly you need to find community. And it can be many communities. Like we said, you need to find places where people value you, they love you, they respect you, they're relatable to you. That is not online. I repeat, that is not online, because your influencer friend or community might become unrelatable one day, and that doesn't need to be the case if you find a people who you can grow with, you can learn with, who have the same interests as you.
two things. In the words of Rihanna, find love in a hopeless place.
Oh my God.
Capitalism be a hopeless place. But to the second to the second thing, you can find online, okay, maybe this is contradicting to what Ashley said, but
That's okay.
you can find online community, but make sure part of that online community comes in person. So like the huge talk of like, are we too connected? Is society supposed to be as connected as we are
We're
now?
like, well, who's connected?
And it's like, I don't think there's not that at all, but I don't think most of the connection online is real. And I think as with ADHD and like object permanence on that is everything, it feels even less real. And so we need to in some way bring it into the real life, or you need to just find it offline.
Side note, what do we call it? Commercial break. I sometimes think that my life before I got diagnosed with ADHD, I was neurotypical, but I know that's not true. But sometimes I'm like, oh, I wonder what a neurotypical person would think about their online friends and if they feel like they don't exist when they're not online. And I almost was like, what did I used to think? And I'm like, you've always had ADHD, you just didn't know it, so you can't do that. But I get what you're saying.
What does Adrian think?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him. He probably doesn't think the way we think because his brain's different. But it makes sense in like people think we're too connected. Like, was someone in California really supposed to ever have a conversation with someone in New York? Should we have that much access to people? And like that's a good question, because if we have so much access to people all over the world, why would we connect with people physically in our communities? But then on the flip side, like, yes, we're connected, but it's fake connection. So the answer still lies that we need to connect with people in person, which is why you can start an online community, but you need to bring it in person to formalize it and make it real in your mind, especially if you have ADHD.
I think the question's phrased wrong. I think it's, do we have too much access online? It's not, are we too connected? Because we're not fucking connected at all. We just
access
have
information.
Access.
Yeah.
And access is not connection. And
access
so it's like,
is not connection. Yeah, access is not connection.
The question is, do we have too much
access?
The answer is yes. The answer is 100% yes.
The fact that someone in Canada can know about my dog and my life and my daily walks, and I could never know who they are, is so weird to me. Like, I get it, but like, it's weird. That's a lot of access to have into someone's life to not actually be connected to them. And then to not actually
object permanence of me not thinking that's real. That doesn't exist.
You're like, that person in Canada who knows about my dog and is talking to her husband about me. That's not real. It is.
You need to bring it in person because, I was talking about this with Ashley last week, and, like the object permanence of it and what it really comes down to is like, I was talking to Ashley about this in person. I was like, like, Ashley, if you told me, like, that was really helpful for me today, that really meant a lot to me, thank you so much for helping me out, I'd be like, yes, oh my gosh, that felt so good. Ashley is so appreciative of me, and like, that's so happy, and my brain can like remember that moment, and like the feeling is conveyed. Where online, all of that feeling's not conveyed. And like, you can send me a message of saying that like, oh my gosh, you've been helping me so much, that was so amazing, and it's not necessarily like, it's not your fault that that's just not conveyed the same, and it's just because like that insane connection hasn't been built. Not insane connection, but that true deep connection has not been built until you're in person, in my opinion. And so it just doesn't mean as much.
Yeah, if someone DMs you and they're like, I love your podcast, it's like, thank you so much. If someone I know in real life is like, I love your podcast, I'm like, you love my podcast?
Yeah.
Thanks. That's so cool. You listen to it, right? And it's not that person's fault. And like, please tell me you love our podcast if you love our podcast. I'm actually really grateful. That's really cool.
I'm grateful, but it just, your brain doesn't perceive it as the same.
Especially with ADHD, because of object permanence, like, you can't see the person. Do they actually exist?
Yeah.
And especially if you think about that, we live in a world where we are constantly consuming text and video and audio. And so is this a real thing, or is this just another thing that I'm reading on the internet kind of thing?
Yeah. And it's like my brain just thought of like, okay, so like when people, what's that website that they pay for like celebrities to like wish you a happy birthday or whatever? Cameo, like even that to me feels fake.
You're like, is this a robot? Is this a deep fake? Is this a real
Yeah.
person? Yeah, that makes sense. So there's a lot of value in in-person community. Even just like me and Victoria being friends in the real world, not just online, was really cool because we could talk about our problems in a way that we don't talk about them online. We could philosophize on ridiculous topics and come up with theories that would be really difficult to make sense of in an online space. And there's just so much power in that.
And we build memories together. Like, you can build memories with somebody online, but, like, when you're in person and we're hiking, like, we have so many memories. When we were in Mexico, I texted Ashley the other day. I was like, remember when we got, like, attacked by a fucking massive grasshopper? And she was like, oh, my God, yeah, I wouldn't forget. I was like, yeah, my brain just reminded me of that. Just, I wanted to bring it up to you. And, like, because we have that in-person memories and connections, it just means so much more.
Yeah. And well, like, what are you going to do with your online friends? Be like, remember that meme I sent you 2 months ago? Like, and I mean, your connections with online friends could be deeper than that. You can meet on Zoom or whatever, but there's so much value in community. So let's get to the second one before we spend another 45 minutes talking about things.
True.
Number 2, we have to redefine productivity and working and all of those things.
Mm-hmm. And kind of like cancel the idea of having to do it all the time, and the self-worth and productivity connection needs to
be sliced. That was a really hard one for me to slice, obviously, since I don't tie my self-worth to productivity as much, but I just think I get stuck in a pattern where my default is productivity, I know that I'm worthy if I take a nap today, if I only work 3 hours. But on the flip side, it's like my engine's default is to be productive. So if I'm not mindful and if I'm not thinking about it, I'll just go into overdrive because that's what my body has done for 27 years. And we have to redefine what it means to be productive. And part of that comes into the expectations we set for ourselves. How many things do you think you should get done in a day? Is resting productive to you? It's very productive to me. Is painting productive to you? Is going on walks productive to you? And how can you detach this idea that you have to be productive at all?
Yeah, and also like, reframing like what does productive mean? Because then it's like even, rest, I guess, can be productive of like, oh, I need to rest to like get back to like doing things.
Yeah.
And so you're still trying to do things.
Right, because if you're defining productive as I'm getting a lot of things done, then you're going to take your nap in an effort to get more things done. And like, is that even serving you to do it in that way? And why do you have to get so many things done? And who's putting these expectations on you? And some people can say, it's their job, whatever, but maybe there's a way that you can also redefine productivity within your job to set more realistic expectations for what people can expect from you.
Yeah, and it's like I think you need to redefine productivity in all areas of your life, because then it's like, we're told like, okay, your person will come to you when you stop looking for them and you just work on yourself. So then people are trying to productively work on themselves so that then that happens faster. And it's like, okay, still not learning, not necessarily that needs to be the lesson, but it's like breeding into that sense of productivity again, is like, do this, do more of this, it's everything. It's like, don't do as much as that, still do more though. Just what you're doing.
So I guess if you're struggling with how you view productivity, the easiest thing to ask yourself is, how do I slow down? Or what would it look like to slow down? That's kind of how I approached it, because for me, productivity was that go, 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 go. And I didn't really understand how to detach my self-worth from that. It felt like a big mountain to climb. And so I think back in August was when I was like, how do I slow down? What would it look like to slow down? What would it look like to do less? And that really helped me, because in little ways, I found ways that I could do less. Maybe I put one less thing on my to-do list. Maybe I had one less expectation for myself in my goals, and it's like these little tweaks that you can start making that will make you feel happier, because let's be quite honest, when you're forcing yourself to go, go, go all the time, are you really happy? I'm not. And I guess you can also, in redefining productivity, define what makes you happy. If you're not being productive, what would you want to be doing if you're not working towards something? And maybe that means doing nothing. Maybe that means just enjoying your life and being around people that you love. But you have to define what the opposite of productivity is for you so you can know how to start to fill your time in different ways.
You know what'd be really interesting is, the idea of like, okay, like what would your dream day be like? How would you live? What time do you wake up? What time do you do things? What if we thought of like, what does our dream week look like? Because that can tell us more about like how we want to be productive and like how we want to be going about things. Because it's like a day, then it's like, you're probably thinking of like a Saturday. And so it's like, what if we think about like a week or like even like 3 or 4 days? Right. And think of like, okay, how would each one go? Like, what would you want to be doing? And like each day, how is it different? Is it the same? What is that like? I think that's a really interesting concept to think of, like to break that pattern.
Right, like, because do you actually want to be productive, or is that just how your days have been shaped for you? Even people who are like, I wake up at this time and then I go to work and then I have to go to the gym and then I have to work on this thing, and it's like work all day long, whether it's on yourself, on your job, on the next thing that you have coming up. And it's like, we took a step back from the grind. What would you do Monday? What would you do Tuesday? What would be fun Wednesday? And I can even think about my week. My mornings would always look the same. They would be very, very slow. I would have Wednesdays off. I would do different things in the evening that brought me joy. And like, I think the other thing with productivity is thinking about like, what can you do that has no benefit, no outcome, no goal to meet, right? Like us doing paint by number, that is something that I do that is genuinely not productive at all. There's like, obviously there's mental health benefits. It makes me feel good, but like, it's not bettering the world. I'm not, I don't know, making a bunch of money from it. And so how can you find things that have no value in the end other than bringing you joy?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3. And this goes along with setting high expectations and being angry when the world's working against you. We got to create some mindfulness practices. And some people might be like, oh, well, you need to be grateful. And when me and Victoria were talking about this, I'm like, oh, I hate when people say just be grateful. Like, oh, grateful when the plane took off on time, or grateful that your phone is working this morning. But it's more about being mindful. Victoria, tell us.
Okay, so like I have 2 great examples all within just yesterday. So I was in the airport. I actually got a great mocktail in the airport, and guys, it was like $4 or $5. Like I thought they were gonna charge me $12, and she was like, if you want a refill, it's like $1. And I was just like, what the fuck? This is an airport. But anyways, back on track. So I fell in the airport, and genuinely, even just a year ago, me would have had like a full-blown panic attack of everyone judging me. I would literally have gone to another wing and like held my head down the entire time, thought about it the entire flight, all day, like not have another thought about how, just thinking everyone was judging me and all of that. Nobody's doing that in reality. Maybe for literally 2.5 seconds. But then guess what? Our attention span's so fucking short. It's like a TikTok video. We're just scrolling to the next thing. Everyone's too consumed about themselves. And so then I fell, and this man helped me up, and I just started laughing, and like 10 people around me started laughing, because the way I fell is I was rolling around on top of my suitcase, like your parents always tell you not to do. And then I fell, and and then I was laughing. She's like, oh, I guess that's why our moms always tell us not to do that. And I was like, guess who's not going to learn from it though? Me. But I was just like and I had that moment. I was just like, wow, I'm so proud of myself for just laughing at this, and just like, who fucking cares? I put a smile on 10 people's faces that day from falling. Who fucking cares? And I was just so happy to be in that moment. And I also was thinking all day, I was like, it would be so nice. I just really need some alone time after like the past 3 days. I was like, I really need some deep compressing alone time. And I get on my flight. I had a whole row to myself. And I was like, universe, you really did something there. I love you. Thank you so much. And because like in each moment, I was just mindful of like what was happening. And it's like, okay, like I felt like it doesn't matter. Ha ha ha. Like that was kind of funny and everything. People enjoyed. And then because I was like, oh man, I really want some alone time, I was given that alone time, given a space to have that. And I was just so thankful that happened. Like, I didn't expect that at all. I actually literally was looking in the morning to see if I'd pay more to change my seat to see if I could get like alone or at least like only 2 people in a row. And then I was like, no, whatever happens will happen. And then I just got granted the greatest opportunity. And I was just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I enjoyed the entire experience. And I was present and exciting to be in that moment and like not overlooking these things. And I thought about in that moment, like kind of lucky girl syndrome. I think real lucky girl syndrome is like, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm so lucky, things are always working out for me and everything. But it's like, you know, like, I hope today I get some alone time. Boom, granted. And like being happy and present about it. And it's not necessarily being like, okay, what are 5 things I was grateful for today? But it's like learning to practice in real time of like, oh, you know, things aren't going great right now, but I can breathe through my nostrils and that does sure feel good, totally. You know? And like, we really think like, okay, I'm grateful, okay? Like, I got dinner on the table today, or like I got my favorite food, that was cool. But like we're not even really like necessarily grateful for that. And I think
you're just
like
writing it down, for some stupid journal activity.
It's a productivity thing for self-worth.
It's a productivity thing for self-worth to write down 5 things you're grateful for instead of learning mindfulness, which is being grateful in the moment. And I like the theory on lucky girl syndrome because my theory is I think we're all lucky all the time. Good things are happening for us, but you have to be like you were in that moment, willing to access that. If your plane took off on time, we might not think that's very lucky, but maybe it is. Maybe every other plane in the airport is delayed, you know?
Oh, and my plane was delayed and I didn't even give a fuck.
Yeah, of course.
My plane got delayed 30 minutes and I was like, okay, that's fun. I don't care. And then I was like, maybe I'll go get another mocktail. But then I got distracted by something. I was like, I got 30 more minutes of sunshine time. Enjoying, I got granted with 30 minutes of sunshine time. And then we actually got there early because they're like, we're going to pick up tailwind, guys. We're going to get you there on time. Do not worry. And I was just like, dude, I'm not worried.
Yeah, totally. And it's like bad things can happen, but then when you're being mindful, you really shift into, okay, what is good? And I always think about the book that's called Thank You for Being Late. And it's about this guy who talks about basically the concept of like, when someone shows up late to a meeting, it might be really easy to get frustrated and be like, oh, this is so disrespectful. Like, I can't believe they did that. This is so annoying. Like, I'm just sitting here and they don't value my time. And what do I even do with this time? They're wasting my time. But Thank You for Being Late really presents this idea that now you had 5 minutes to yourself. What could you have done with that 5 minutes? You know, anytime I have a meeting, or I remember someone was late to one of my coaching calls and they were 10 minutes late and I got to FaceTime my sister. So they were like, sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't worry. I'm actually, thank you for being late because I got to talk to my sister for 10 minutes and I wouldn't have got to do that before. Or I got a moment to myself today and I haven't had a moment to myself all day long. And it's finding the joy and the good in no matter what situation you're in, because it's very easy to feel like the odds are stacked up against you and the world is ready to fight you and everybody wants your day to go wrong. But that one moment of mindfulness can shift your entire day around. I've had mornings where everything is going wrong and Max is screaming at me and I'm breaking glasses and I'm ripping my pants on the door because Max made me fall. And I could just look at that and be so angry and that would fuel my whole day. But instead, it's taking that moment and thinking, which could feel really hard in the moment, like, okay, what do we got here? What are we working with? Okay, I'm going to go. I can journal right now. That's really cool. That's going to make me feel really good. Or, you know what? Hey, that glass broke, but at least it wasn't 3 glasses. And just finding those little things that maybe things suck, but it could be worse. And like, that's the new expectation is like, instead of having high expectations, what if it was like the lower expectation that happened? You know, your plane was 30 minutes late. I'm glad it wasn't 3 hours late. And even if it was 3 hours late, that's 3 hours of sunshine, you know? And finding that in the frustrating times, because that literally situation happened, and finding a moment of joy flipped my whole day around instead of leaving me frustrated.
And it's like, I also want to say is it's not always your first thought that mindfulness comes in. Yeah. And I think like that gentle parenting video we saw a while ago, like really like showed that. And it's like, okay, when my flight was delayed, I was like, oh, damn. And then I was like, okay, so we have 30 minutes. what can we do in 30 minutes in the airport? You know, like airports, there's not even that much to do in general. And I was like, I guess I can like watch something. And then I looked over, I'm like, the sunshine's still there. Like I'm in Florida. I guess, you know, more sunshine time. And I was like, sunshine time sounds good. Let's go to the sunshine. And, you know, it's like a few feet away from my gate and everything. I could still see it in case anything changed. And so it wasn't like a massive thing. And I was like, yeah, let's go get sunshine. And it was my second thought that I was able to process that. That first thought, it's okay if it's like, fuck, this sucks. And then you're like,
yeah,
okay, this sucks. This is a shitty situation. How can I at least make it more palatable for me?
Right, you really think I'm going to rip my pants and break a glass and be like, well, this is the best day ever? No, your feelings and emotions are valid. But one of the really cool things that I've heard about feelings is like they're physically something that happen in your body, and you give them 90 seconds because that's usually how long they last, and then you let them go. So if your first thought is, I am so mad that I just ripped my pants and I broke that dish, be angry. But you know what's also cool is if you name where you're feeling that anger, you're like, oh, I feel my shoulders tense up, I'm so freaking mad. You let that go because it should only last 90 seconds, and then you're going to have second thought. We love second thoughts.
Second thoughts, second servings,
second sleep.
Second sleep.
That's the next merch.
Yeah.
Second thoughts, second servings, second sleep.
Oh my God. It's all about those second thoughts, you know? And so it's like, I say that because I think in the mindfulness thing is like, you know, it kind of looks like, oh, like I'm doing something wrong because I am a pretty mindful person. I am very good at that. But then it like, I can be like, oh, well, like that's not my first thought. Is something wrong with me? Like, am I not doing it right? What am I missing in this practice? How am I doing this wrong? And it's like, why am I going so fast to judge myself?
Yeah.
So, but on the second thing is it's your second thought that mindfulness really can kick in. It's not always, and sometimes it can be the third or the fourth or the fifth, you know, whatever.
It might not even happen for an hour later, you know, like don't pressure yourself. But a moment of mindfulness a day goes a long way, and it's way better than using some dumb journal and writing down 5 things you are grateful for. Number 4, redefine success. And this gets into being unhappy about where you are when you're chasing money, when you're chasing goals. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to only feel successful after I've done a certain thing. I want to feel successful every day of my life because that's a good feeling to have, to feel confident, to feel competent, to feel sure of yourself. So you have to define what brings you those feelings instead of waiting to get the thing to feel the feeling. And it could be as simple as, I want to make $10,000. How do I think I'm going to feel when I make $10,000? I'm going to feel creative. I'm going to feel excited. I'm going to feel like I want to dance around my room. Well, what can I do today to get that feeling? I could quite literally dance around my room. Let me capture that essence today. And that is literally the fastest way to get out of feeling like the world is against you when you haven't hit your goal yet. Bring those feelings to you now.
And I think on second thought of that is like, okay, like that feeling of like $10,000, but like also think of like, okay, what are other things that make me feel that way? Because, you know, it's not, that $10,000 isn't like guaranteed to you, especially like in sales, like you just don't know. But what about like, okay, this is what it feels like. What are other things that make me feel like that may be smaller that I can enact every day that might not even have to do with like work or productivity and could just be like in myself of like, oh, a really nice sunset does. And so it's like, okay, if I notice that like at 4:00, like it's not cloudy, maybe I'm going to make sure I can go see the sunset tonight, you know, because it will be nice and that brings me the same feelings or,
that's so
you know,
funny.
Whatever.
Not that that's funny, but I love that because when I think about what success feels like me, success like makes me want to cry because I just feel so proud of myself. And so it's like, how do I find moments outside of work that I feel so proud of myself that I want to cry? And that's how I've been feeling training for running. Every time I hit a new goal, like I run another mile or I add on another 5 minutes, I'm literally so proud of myself I could cry. So it's like, even if I don't add $10,000 to my income stream every month, I have this like running hobby that, I mean, some people could say it's productive because I'm exercising, but it's mostly like a fun challenge for me and a way to spend my time. And it makes me feel so proud of myself. Like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And that's how I feel whenever I make money inside of my business. Sometimes I'm like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And so it is. It's like, what is that feeling? What other things do you do that brings you that feeling?
You know, like another one for me is like when I notice moments of like how I'm changing how I'm acting. So, you know, like yesterday when I fell, like I was so proud of myself. I literally almost started crying after, which is like hysterical because it's like, okay, she fell, she's laughing, now she's crying.
Yeah.
But I was so proud of myself. I was like, wow, that was such a good moment, Victoria. You aced that shit.
Yeah.
A year ago, you was crying right now because she couldn't do that, and she's so fucking proud of everything that has gone into that moment to make you do that. And
yes.
it's the same exact feeling.
Yeah. Well, even like on Monday and Tuesday, I wanted to cry because I was like looking at my day, kind of how we were like redefine productivity. I was looking at my day and I was like, oh my God, I am doing everything I've ever wanted to do. 6 months ago in August, I was so devastated about my life. I wanted to change my business. I had no idea what I wanted to do, even though I did. Literally, I wrote down in a journal, and this is what made me cry because I looked at it. It was like, all I want to do is creatively document my life and create content and inspire people. And like, here I am doing that. And I was like, I'm going to cry. Like, I literally spent 2 days living my dream life. That is so cool. Even if I didn't make a single penny that day, I lived my dream life. And it's like, how do you find those moments where you grew a lot in a period of time, or you're different than you used to be, or like everything is working out in a way that makes you feel proud of yourself the same way hitting a goal or making money or being more successful or getting your dream job would.
Mm-hmm. And so it's like, you don't have to only feel it in one way. So what are other ways that you can feel like it, and how can you start implementing them on like a daily basis or at least a weekly basis, and so that you can start feeling that success now, so that you're not waiting to feel like it, because if you're waiting to feel like it, you're never going to feel like it. I mean,
Ding
you might,
dong.
but like odds are off.
Ding dong. And the last one
Ding
is...
dong, fuck your life.
No, I said ding dong. Like the makeup show. Have you watched the makeup show?
No.
On Netflix?
No. Isn't
Anyways,
everyone canceling Netflix?
Yeah, that's fine though. No, some lady says ding dong to the contestants every time they do a good job. So ding dong to you. Anyways, number 5 is surrender. You know, we got all these things outside of our control, and it could be really difficult if you try to control people, situations, things that are really outside of your power. And sometimes you just have to recognize when you've done all that you can do, and it's not your job to do anything more, and just surrender to the situations that you're in. And this is really where mindfulness, I think, comes in, because it can help you surrender, you know?
You know, it's like, you don't have control over when the flight is going to be there, but you can be happy when it is there, and you can be happy that your seat, you know, is not wet. You know, sometimes you like get on like a ride and your seat is already wet and you're like, ugh, and it's whatever. Make it to be what you want. Like, you have control over so much, but also so little at the same time. But we often try to always see what we don't have control over and fret over it. And so how can you shift to noticing what you you can control, and you can have that right first thought of like, this is so fucking annoying, this is happening, and I can't do anything about it. Okay. Is there something else I can do about it? Is there something I could do to make me feel better about it, at least in the moment? You know, if the entire situation is completely out of your hands. An example, my entire birthday just got canceled, and, you know, I have no control over the whole thing. My grandmother died and they're having the funeral on my birthday, and nobody realizes that. What am I going to do to feel better about myself yet? I am not sure, but I don't have control over the situation. I'm not planning the entire thing. I am going to do something. What yet? I don't know. And I don't have to know right away either. And so...
Yeah. And like
it's just finding what you can do.
Yeah. And the short answer is the only thing you can control is how you feel and what you do. That's quite literally how life works. So Victoria gets the opportunity, even though it's an unfortunate circumstance, to decide what she does and how she feels. She can go into it being really pissed off, or she can go into it and decide she wants to feel something else. And that's up to her, right? And that's up to all of us to decide how we're going to feel in a moment. Same thing if we think about all these other things against you, not having community, feeling like you have to be productive all the time, not having enough money. Maybe that's not in your control right now to lessen your productivity because of your job, or you don't have friends, or you haven't hit your goal. That's that's okay, but how do you want to feel about that? Because you don't have to be angry. That can be your first thought. What's your second thought?
Remember, anger is a secondary emotion that's covering up something else that's existing. So dig deeper into the feelings.
Dig deeper into the feelings, but also recognize that you can find joy where you're at right now. And I really hate when people say that. Like, I really do. Where they're like, just be happy now, and that's how you'll get what you want. And I'm like, shut up.
I think we hate it because that's what we're learning.
Oh, it's like,
we're like deeply going through it. And it's like, okay.
I'm like, well, I'm going to find out if this is true because I don't believe you. And then now I'm like, no, you really just have to freaking find joy in your day. And that's how you surrender. Like, if you think about, like, what's a hard situation that someone might be in? No, that you have to surrender to. Okay, like, even, like, let's say you're trying to make more sales. That's me. Let's say you're trying to make more sales. And you've done all you can do. You put up all your marketing stuff. You've talked about the thing. You've posted the stuff. Everything's ready to go. It's really not in your control what happens next. You cannot force anyone to buy it. It would be really freaking cool if you could. And now you have to sit and wait and surrender. And there's going to be a part of you that wants to be in control and be like, well, now let me be more productive. Let me post another TikTok. Let me sell this thing in a different way. Let me overthink this. And your insides are going to think that you have the power to change something. But then there's going to be a part of you that realizes deep down, sometimes it's really deep down, that you don't have power to do anything and you've done all you can do. And now all you can do is be happy where you are because everything that you want is coming to you. And that's really hard to believe, which is why I think it's very annoying sometimes. But in those situations, all you have to do is think to times when things have worked out for you, coming back to mindfulness. And those times, have you been mindful in the past? When have you been mindful and things did work? Because that's going to give you evidence that what you want is coming. You can take a break. You can slow down. You can surrender and get what you want.
You know, I think there's also a part of object permanence in that, again, because it's like, okay, it's like you posted everything, but then it's like, okay, that's done. Now what? And it's like, now you don't have, like, it's like I can keep going that back. And I think, like, that object, like, us checking views so often, one, it can be, like, ego and, like, looking to finally get that hit of, like, a sale. But also it can be, like, okay, I did do this. Okay, I did do this. And sometimes it's, like, reminding myself, you've done enough. You've already done it. It's not even to, like, look for that. It's like, hey, remember, we did this thing. We did take action today.
Yeah, maybe it is object permanence. Every day, ladies and gentlemen, I am learning that ADHD is a rude ass life to live.
I mean, I don't know if that's real, but it kind of sounds right.
But yeah, that makes sense. Like, why we would want to see views, because it's like, did anyone see it? It's like if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it even make a sound, kind of thing? Like, if I post a TikTok and nobody sees it, did I even post a TikTok? Because I can barely remember the TikTok in the first place, and I gotta go make sure the TikTok exists. And then if I see the views, I know that the people actually saw it. And that's a really rough ride. Yeah, I've been working really hard to detach myself from views lately. I'm not there yet. I don't know. I'm checking my views way too often, but we'll get there one day.
That was me, like, last week, but now I'm not doing that this week. I haven't figured out why. I mean, I have only posted really today, but I'm not as concerned about it.
I can't tell if it's, like, just a habit that, like, open phone, click,
I think it's also, like, it's easy access.
Like, yeah,
it's a few things, you know, it's, like,
click.
Easy access.
Also, I think part of it is easy access. Part of it, I think it's as a habit. The other thing is, I think that I really enjoy myself and the content I've been creating lately, so I want to watch it again. And do you want to know something so wild? Okay, I have been wondering, because I'm like, okay, I need a situation that's not the internet to compare this to, because that's how I really start to understand things about the world, is like two different things that have nothing to do with each other that have a similar pattern. And so I've been thinking a lot about artists, and maybe you can help me. I'm like, okay, when an artist makes something and they're done with it, what do they do with it? I'm like, do they keep looking at it? Because I would keep looking at it and be really proud of it. Like, and when it's hanging in the art gallery, do they get to know how many people look at it in a day? Like, what does an artist do with their art? Because that's what I think of my content. I think of my content as art, and I'm just like, what does an artist do? Because that will help me normalize or unnormalize. I don't think you're gonna
like this answer.
What do they do? They forget about it?
No.
What do they do?
Often, like, when I experience this, and I have friends, like, experiencing this, is it's kind of like the same thing where you're constantly staring at it because you're like, it's never done. There's always more you can do. And so it's like, what else, how can I continually better this and everything? Or like, now I hate it and whatever. And so it's kind of going through like the same things and constantly checking to see what it's like and your views on it and everything. It's very, And the more you talk about it, the more you might hate it. Because so it's like if you're at like the opening show, like often the artist might be there to like kind of talk about some pieces. So they might like after the first like, let's say if it's a giant place, like 100 people, now you're getting like really bored talking about the shit. And you're like, this thing
they're like,
sucks. Other stuff is so cool, but that's just because you didn't create it.
And you're like looking that there's like 100 people looking at your stuff. Because I almost think like posting on TikTok is like opening day at the art gallery where you're there. Like you want to see people looking at your stuff. You want to hear what they're saying. So you want to go check it out. Well, that kind of normalizes it for me. I feel less bad about checking out my views. I'll have to find another scenario where somebody doesn't do that. Maybe film people? I don't know. What about directors? Like actors don't like watching their movies, but they probably do check how many people are watching their movies and how it's ranking. So like, is this a societal problem?
I think it's a societal thing.
Fuck, man. I just really didn't want to have to deal with that.
And it's like one, self-worth attached to productivity, but also like how people are viewing kind of like, okay, they put themselves into this work, so how are people viewing it and like experiencing it and enjoying it? Or like if they're not enjoying it, then like you are personally being attacked, so like you're watching it.
Fascinating.
Maybe some aren't, okay? And like I just haven't seen that though.
Yeah, maybe some artists look at their paintings and then make their paintings and then never look at them again.
I mean, I would love to know, remember that band that like they like surrendered and then they blew up?
Yeah.
I would love to know with that, if they were watching it or anything.
Right. Because the story Victoria's talking about is, we've talked about this in a podcast episode where they surrendered in a way that they were like, we're going to post one more YouTube video to try and make our music career take off. This YouTube video is either going to be it or it's not. We'll be really excited if it is, but that is what it is. And it's like, well, they had to be checking views because it was going viral. So like,
did they post it before they went to bed and then like look at it later, or did they post it and they went about their day and everything, and then people are like, oh my god, it's going viral? Because it doesn't always go viral like instantaneously.
Yeah, it's totally true.
It could go viral
especially
a week later.
YouTube. I don't know. And the other thing I've been thinking about is like, if I wasn't attached to my content when I was working for social media companies, I wouldn't look at any of the analytics until the end of the week. It would be like once a week we would look at the analytics to review, and that's it. Or maybe every 2 weeks. So it really is an attachment. It's
just ego-driven.
Your art. Oh, yeah. Anyways.
But yeah, this was good. 5 things to help your happiness. And I will say, as much as it sucks, it does help.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of like a heavy topic. So if you want quick things to do, like let's do a quick recap. 5 things to make you happy. Ready? Find community. If you can't do that on a massive scale right now, go make one new friend. That's your challenge. Make one new friend. Redefine productivity. Remember, easy thing to do. Find one way to slow down this week in an area of your life. Number 3, create mindfulness. Give yourself that second thought. 4, redefine success. This can be very, very simple in finding one way to feel the feeling you think you'll feel when you get the thing you want this week. And number 5, surrender. And that's just really easy. You know, you just gotta let that shit go, and that's it.
That's the hardest one, but yeah.
Ooh, that's why we saved it for last, because I'm still learning about that one. I don't know.
Because surrendering is like surrendering the ego also.
Yeah, well, the ego...
It's not just control.
Yeah, the ego, it's out here doing things, and that takes a lot of work. So that's why I start with the 4 easy ones, and then if you get to surrender, good job.
4 easy ones.
Find a whole community. Super easy, guys. No, find one friend. Okay, anyways, I think that's it for today's episode. This was very, very long. We hope you got a lot out of this. Please go on the Instagram account and tell us what you got out of this episode. What was your takeaway, your aha moment, the thing that you learned and the thing that you're going to implement? I can't wait to talk to you guys next week, and I hope you've been enjoying our solo episodes. Don't forget to go buy merch. We're going to come out with new merch soon, so make sure you go get the current merch. It's not you, it's my needs. Say no, 98% sober hat, socially selective shirt, and go buy those, and then do that before you get overwhelmed with more options, because the new options are going to be so good.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, that's it for us, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.